just a couple of days ago, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe finalised the details of this record-breaking stimulus package worth almost $1 trillion. For those of us not as smart as you, Jamil, what exactly does this money do?
Okay, so essentially, since Shinzo Abe has been the Prime Minister of Japan, he has been extremely flexible with providing more stimulus and help to the Japanese economy. To such an extent, we actually call his reigns in economic terms Abenomics, because this is just another chapter on top of additional chapters that have come over the past couple of years. But essentially what this money has done, 1 trillion equates to about 20% of Japanese GDP. This is how much it's feared the Japanese economy could lose. So what this money is trying to do really is put the fuel back into the engine. So for however long the economy is at a standstill, or there's restriction measures, or it's impacted by what's going on outside of Japan, essentially it's just to try and balance out the books. What is good, though, about this stimulus and what is helpful is that it includes billions of cash handouts to Japanese citizens, which is very important where we see so many jobs are at risk on a global level. And of course, that cash that citizens are going to be provided with will hopefully support the small businesses, the restaurants, and so on, which are another industry that's going to be at risk based on essentially everything else being cut off when it comes to supply. So hopefully this will help sentiment, it will help confidence. Of course, if this situation persists for Japan more than 2 to 3 months, it's only a matter of time before the market, before the Japanese people ask for even more stimulus measures.
Thanks for that analysis there, Jamil. You spoke about fear a couple of times, and I don't know why. It could be because we're in lockdown and I've got more reading time on my hands. But it appears as if you compare Japan to other G7 economies, there appears to be more fear with Japan and their lockdown. There are some suggestions that in this quarter, Q2, they could drop, their GDP could fall by between 20 and 25%. Do you think there is a keen focus on Japan, maybe because they're late or because a lot of people are relying on Japan?
I think it's a surprise that Japan's being singled out here. Look, one of the issues with Japan is that government data shows that the majority of people are not able to work from home. And we have to remember that Japan is a complete different kettle of fish when it comes to society norms, when it comes to cultural norms. So what we've seen in the UK, US, and Europe in terms of how to deal with this outbreak, we can't replicate that situation for Japan. But there is light there in the tunnel for Japan. Despite this coronavirus risk being present for as long as it has been present in most of Asia, which really comes into the second half of January, February time. It has one of the lowest ratios of coronavirus outbreak numbers. It has a low number of fatalities. So in fact, by doing things a little bit different in terms of reacting to this, it hasn't had a negative impact on Japan. Like the numbers give you an example, the United States has way above 10 times the number of outbreaks to Japan. Japan is just over 40,000. In America, it's 440,000 as of yesterday. So it shows that despite this being in play for a lot longer, Japan, that people are managing to cope with it, and you're having a low rate of infections.
Well, yes, although there are some criticisms, I must say, Jamil, some people think that testing is probably one of the reasons why we're not seeing those high figures. But nevertheless, Abe, when he addressed the nation this week, unlike his G7 counterparts, he was very careful about not, going into this full lockdown. There aren't any legal requirements. There's no legislation going through Parliament for people to enforce it. They're asking people to just act with common sense. Do you think that's smart? Do you think he's had the time to see what lockdowns are doing in other nations and he desperately wants to avoid that, the economic loss?
I don't think so, because again, Japan is a different kettle of fish altogether. Essentially, the Japanese people are very different. They are so used to working in the office. Again, up to 80–90% of Japanese people cannot work from home, which is a complete different situation to what we have in the UK, where the majority of people are now told to work from home, and it's becoming the norm. So if people can't work from home, of course, this has a huge impact on the economy anyway, when it productivity levels. And essentially Japan is different. South Korea is different. South Korea's handled the situation with huge credit and flaws. But at the beginning, people were concerned that Japan would become what Italy became. Sorry, that South Korea would become what Italy became. And of course, Japan at the same point, the society and the cultural norms are so different. They cannot do the exact same measures as what China did, where essentially could lock down people and people would listen to authorities. In Japan, society and culture is so different that if you did do that or threaten that, it would raise alarm and fear. Wow. And at the moment, there's more calm.
Yeah, gosh, that's really interesting. Nuance is so important, isn't it? Especially when you're dealing with countries outside of the West. I've got to ask you about the Summer Olympic Games. Really painful for Abe, who has kind of had a squeaky clean tenure, very revered, not just in Japan, across the world. This has got to have had a major effect on the economy. It has been postponed until next year. Do you think that the cancellation, or the late cancellation, is one of the reasons why these lockdown measures and stimulus packages are coming so late in the game?
It's very much possible. I think we have to focus on the numbers here, because Japan has spent a tremendous amount of money on the Olympic Games and hosting the Games. Just to give you a few figures here, it's over $12.6 billion. You're looking at, that's not even including other government spending and sponsorships from Japanese companies who obviously want to expose their brand at such a hugely watched global event. And the output impact that this can have on tourism too. Of course, Japan was very much hoping to host people from all over the world in the same way that London managed to do in the 2012 Olympics, and it would provide a huge tourism boost, it would provide a huge spending boost, and this is money that, of course, the economy is going to lose. Just to give you what Nomura are thinking right now, they did expect that Japan could have a contraction of 0.7% for 2020. Of course, this was before the coronavirus outbreak too, but they also suggested that if the games were cancelled at that point, where there was speculation that it would have to be cancelled, that contraction would double to 1.5%. So this just shows how much the economy was relying on the games. And also, it was a tremendous opportunity to showcase Japan as this huge tourism destination. Of course, many of us wish that we could go to Japan, and Japan's definitely on the bucket list for many people. But the truth is, over 50% of Japanese tourists have always been from China. That's what the data shows from 2018 and 2019. And the second biggest category is from South Korea. Hopefully, 2021 will be a complete different story, because we'll completely forget about this uncertainty and unprecedented situation that we're going through now. But for now, that is money and that is opportunity that's lost for the economy. We just hope that it will be able to resume output in 2021, hopefully before that. And that's the same for everywhere globally. We're seeing some shocking numbers, 10 million jobs lost in the United States over the past 2 weeks. That's tremendous. You're seeing record low PMIs in Europe, record low data in the United Kingdom. All the world is going to face this issue. Hopefully there will be light at the tunnel at some stage.